What does 50-50 custody mean to you? Part 1, part of the series, Mediation Tips by Fran Brochstein. That is your topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hey everyone, this is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator working throughout Florida and Texas.
And Natalia Ołowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
And I'm Fran Brochstein, attorney and mediator in Texas.
All right, so welcome back to the videocast and podcast, and we're here again with our good friend Fran Brochstein, who, as part of her series, helps us delve into different legal topics / conflict resolution and mediation topics. And so, Fran, this topic today deals with an issue that seems to come up all the time, where parents, typically in different jurisdictions around the world, specifically our own as well, say things like, I want 50-50 custody. All right, I get this question all the time. And as a mediator, even not just as an attorney, but as a mediator, I get parents who want it, typically men, typically dads. All right, but anyway, wanted to start this thing off by kind of going around and having each of us answer the question, what does 50-50 mean to us? And what actually is the law? Okay. So why don't we start off with you, Fran, and then we'll go with Natalia, and then we'll come back to me before we move on to the next kind of issue. Go ahead, Fran. Floor is yours.
Well, as a Texas mediator, a lot of people come to me for 50-50 custody because in Texas, the law is not, it gets proposed every Texas legislative session, but it hasn't passed yet. So I do a lot of 50-50. The key to doing a 50-50 is the parents must live close together and they must be willing to actively co-parent. That is essential. And then my next question is to the people, what does 50-50 look like to you? Because many people have very strange work schedules. So I like doing mediation because it is creative, and I do a lot of reality testing with people. What do you guys do?
Starting with me then, so the European perspective, although of course I'm speaking from the perspective of the Polish law, and again, not as a legal advice, you need to distinguish between the different concepts, because Poland is a country when we don't have a custody as defined by law. We do have two different things. One thing is parental authority, and we still call it authority, like you really have authority over your child. And the other term is actually the place of residence or habitual residence of the child, meaning with whom of the parents the child lives. And within those frames, the parental authority is the power to decide about the child, and this residence is actually with whom the child how much time spends. Meaning one parent becomes the main parent with the other parent. The child resides only within the visitation scheme. So we have contact rights. And in order to have it 50-50, of course, people imagine you just go and do it the way week per week or 2 weeks per 2 weeks. I even had a dad who demanded 4 months per 4 months. And I also happened to hear someone from Canada wishing to co-parent the child 6 months in Canada and 6 months in Poland. So basically, it doesn't work this way. Polish law doesn't define joint custody, shared custody, 50-50 custody. But what it says is basically what, Fran, you mentioned, and it is always surprising to me how similarly those concepts work. And I would say what preconditions we, as per practice, we develop to have. But I'm very curious to hear what Mac has to say about the 50-50.
Yeah, so I get calls sometimes, and I'll talk to let's say a father, right, on the telephone, and he might say something like, "Well, I don't think it's fair that the mom gets the child, most of the time, and I don't. I'm a co-equal parent." And all true. Okay. It's just that the law hasn't caught up to that. And so the law basically has it where judges want children in quote unquote one home, right? They don't want kids living in a suitcase. They don't want kids, spending an hour and a half in a car being driven to school by a parent who lives really, really far away. And so, generally speaking, we're still stuck where the law assumes that you're going to have one parent have the child most of the time, and the other parent gets what we call possession rights. So, let me go back a step. One of the things uh, that gets kind of mixed up is when people say 50-50 custody. Question: are they talking about what we call decision making rights, conservatorship, custody, decision making rights, stuff like that? Or are they talking about possession, like having the child, okay, for a certain period of time? I think it's a little bit of both. Okay. So I think a person who brings up 50-50 custody or joint custody, sometimes that's referred to, they commingle the two concepts and they basically in their head, it's like, well, we're going to share this child equally. First, in terms of decision making and how we make decisions for the child, and also in terms of time and how much we proportion for each parent. Okay. And so, in my jurisdiction in Texas specifically, we separate the two and we say, okay, the first issue is conservatorship. Let's deal with the decision making. The second concept is possession. Let's deal with that separately. So, first, who gets custody? The mom. Okay, fine. Conservatorship is addressed. Then once we've addressed that, we talk about, okay, then how much time does dad get? And so that is where that's why we're having this conversation, is because there's so much ambiguity and sometimes misunderstanding and sometimes conflating of different concepts that we have to ask our client, hey, what does 50-50 mean to you? Right. And I always have to start out that way whenever I'm mediating a case. Okay. So let's move on, guys, to the next part. When people ask this question, hey, can I get 50-50? What are some of the motivations that drive them to ask this question? What animates people to ask? Why do people even bring this up? Fran, why don't we go back to you? Why do people even say this, that they want 50-50?
Mac, for many reasons. A lot of people think if they get joint custody, they're not going to pay child support. And even with 50-50, that's not realistic. I have done mediations where we have and on this case, well, I can do it, reverse it. I had a woman that was extremely successful and she had a stay at home husband and she wanted a divorce and she wanted basically the husband to go away. He was the one who took the kids to school. He was the one that took the kid to the doctor. The mother traveled extensively. Um, he was a teacher by trade. She was very wealthy. And I said, even if you get a 50-50 custody split, you're going to be paying him some child support in Texas to equalize it. So a lot of people think that 50-50 is going to not do the money. They don't want the other parent to get rich off the other parent. Okay, here's a bottom line. Children are bottomless pits of money. Quite frankly, whatever you pay in child support generally does not cover the child's care. And Texas, a lot of people I've done, men in particular, want to see receipts. And as a judge told me many years ago, if your kid is eating, if there's a roof over the kid's head and the kid is being driven around and the basic needs are being provided, that's where your child support goes. And many years ago, I had a judge tell me, I think that women should give the kids to the dad because after about 6 months, he would be glad to pay child support. Children are a lot of work. They're very time consuming. So, Natalia, what do you think?
And Thank you for that, Fran, because unfortunately, my experience is also the same, that behind this 50-50 custody, meaning sharing the time with the child equally between both parents, usually the motivation is I don't want to have any money transferred to my spouse, to the co parent. She is going to buy expensive bags for that. Her high heels are going to be covered by that.
With the
And
shoes,
likewise,
always the
yeah.
shoes.
So,
I hear that all the time. The shoes.
yeah. And this is actually, or makeup, and this is also the part that goes for that.
The
And
nails. Yeah.
of course, this is something I hear all the time. People usually don't say, this is what is going to be best for my child. The other not appropriate motivation behind it is, this is our child, we are parents, this child belongs to me in half and to her in half. Just like you're able to divide this kid into two halves and have them being shared by, or co-possessed by the parents. This is not, again, the motivation, because when we look at the 50-50 custody of the joint custody, we look at from the perspective of the child and not of the parent. So even if the parent says, I have the right, I am the father, I am the mother, it's not the motivation to have the custody. This is what it will be the best arrangement for the child. And you, Mark?
Yeah. So in I think the primary motivations that I hear whenever a parent comes to me and says, I want 50-50 custody is, again, typically it'll be from a father who will want to have quote unquote co-equal possession with the mom. Okay. Now, sometimes that might have to do with money because in theory, he shouldn't be paying her a dime in child support since he would have the child equally, right? And all we got to worry about then is who gets to claim the child for the taxes. Now, most moms, from what I've discovered, resist this big time. Okay. And so a lot of times, what I always tell parties is if we go to court, no judge in my jurisdiction is going to do this kind of arrangement. The only way that's going to happen is by an agreement. Okay. And there are some moms who would want that. Some moms want the father to contribute in terms of time and give her a break and take the child, right, for his time and make it as fair as possible. And some moms have the opposite problem, okay, where they don't want the father involved at all. And so you get to the extremes. And this is what we do as family lawyers. We see the extremes. But the good news is most of the time, the extremes are not the norm. So that would be what I would say is the primary motivation is most of the time it's a parent who wants to spend equal time, and then sometimes it's because they don't want to pay support. But I've had dads who will say, "Look, I don't care about the money. I'll pay what I gotta pay under the law, but I still want my equal time with my child." And we've and then we're gonna get into the third part. So, guys, let's say parties come to you as a mediator, and yes, we're about to discuss um you know 50-50 custody and what it means to our the parties. What are some creative ways or some solutions that you have addressed this issue? What have you seen, what have you done, and what have people proposed that might be a little far-fetched? But go ahead, Fran.
I've been really fortunate to work with some lovely couples. I remember in particular one couple. Um, they were such good co-parents. I finally asked them, "Why are you divorcing?" They said, "Listen, we're great parents. We're lousy together." And they literally did a 50-50 split. And they both said, "We both want some downtime where we can just go with our friends or go to work." And they literally did like Monday, Tuesday, then the other parent got Wednesday, Thursday, and they alternated weekends. And what they did was they would talk and they would plan their kids' schedule. Um, I was a divorced mom when my kid was little, and I talked to one family. They were married, and they said, "Listen, we never see each other's on the weekends. We have 4 kids. We literally divide the kids. They're all in extracurricular activities. We literally tag team all weekend." and they were married. And that's the reality of having kids involved in extracurricular activities. The parents never saw each other on the weekends, and they were exhausted, and they were married. One of my favorite stories was I had a couple with a couple of teenagers. They lived in the same subdivision. The man was extremely successful. He had married a beautiful young lady, and mom was a real estate agent, and she was working really hard, and they just couldn't figure out how to make this work. So we discussed it for a number, and I finally came up with a crazy solution because mom usually worked until the sunset selling real estate, and especially in the summer in Texas, that's about 8 or 9 o'clock. And so what they did was they would go to dad's house after school, and he would feed them dinner 5 days a week. And then they would go home to her house when she got home, say about 8 o'clock. The kids loved it. Dad loved it. Mom loved it because she didn't have to rush home and feed them. And I was laughing because stepmom was really unhappy.
Hmm.
So she had had a great time. She got to live a fabulous life. They traveled all the time. And all of a sudden now the kids were at his house all the time. And it solved, the kids were happy, mom was happy, and it worked out great. So sometimes if you put the kids first and you look at your work schedule and just do some heavy reality testing, it all works out.
Thank you.
And my perspective is like that. Shared custody doesn't need to be 50-50 custody. You can have so many other arrangements. And the one that I typically like, and it proved to be very successful with many of the clients I've worked with, is 1 week, usually the father, but one of the parents gets the time from Thursday till Monday morning, and the other week, just 1 or 2 nights there. That actually equals to, within the 14 days time, because this is how we practically calculate it, that gives 8 to 6, which is almost 50-50, but enables the kids to see parents in each week. Each of them has the ability to live with the kids, be involved in their everyday activities, not just being the so-called weekend parent. How it also can work, this system you mentioned, Fran, for example, Monday, Tuesday, then change Wednesday, Thursday. This is a good system when, for example, the child has extracurricular activities which are not entirely shared by interest by the parents. What does it mean? That means that, for example, mom would want to bring the kid to tennis and dad to horse riding. And usually you have it on a repetitive the same day of the week. So if you share custody this way, you are able to have your time with the kid and bringing them to making sure the kid is there. Nobody's going to oppose it. Nobody's going to reject coming there. And the other parent has also the freedom to enroll the kids into the activities they would want to. But what needs to be remembered as well is that no matter how we share this, there will always be expenditures that need to be covered. So even if we decide that, okay, the kid lives here and here has 2 homes, there will still be the cost of medical treatment, the cost of those additional activities that the child will be attending. There will still be the cost of the child going away on vacation or like scout camps or things like that have to be somehow accounted for between the parents. And in here, the creativity can reach the sky.
Yes, these are all good reasons why people should consider mediation first before they go to just court, because court's going to be pretty black and white, right? It's going to have the rigid rules. And in Texas, for example, when we go back to this jurisdiction and we say, look, judges want things very simple, okay? One parent's going to, quote unquote, win custody, primary conservatorship with exclusive right to determine the residency of the child, and the other parent will get the schedule. Now, some creative things that I've seen done, and not saying that I've actually done them in my own mediations, but that I've just seen in different orders. Of course, Natalia just brought this up, and you did as well, Fran, and that is the Monday, Tuesday, flip Wednesday, Thursday, We call that a 2-2-3 schedule. So let's say mom gets Monday and Tuesday, dad gets Wednesday, Thursday, and you flip the weekend. And you do that, that's basically half and half, right? Um, then there's, of course, the week on, week off, which is, in my opinion, probably the most popular and presumed schedule whenever people say 50-50. Typically, and I've done it before, right? For different cases. Typically, it's like flip on Sunday, 6 o'clock, and you just share the child, and then you carve out something for the summers. Maybe mom gets June and dad gets July, or something like that. And then flip the, you know, holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, spring break, stuff like that. Um, Natalia brought up earlier schedules where people have suggested, 6 months out of the year. Okay. Sometimes I've never seen this happen, by the way, but I can imagine that maybe with some of these Hague Convention cases, maybe if there was a child sharing arrangement, that you might get to an agreement where you have this kind of schedule. But I don't think it's going to work too well for the child who goes to school. I mean, don't kids go to school, right? You don't want to flip the kids' academics, mid-year, and so I don't see that working. I just think that parents should live pretty close to each other to make this work, and creative ways to make it happen are going to be something where both parents are local. They both can bring the child to school and do the activities, after school activities, and they make it happen out of court, no problem. Anyway, Natalia brought up extracurricular activities. I think you did too, Fran. Guys, we should and we might want to do a whole nother episode just on extracurricular activities, because of the fact that this sometimes can create, first, great opportunities for the child. A child can be a ballerina one day and a baseball player, a softball player the next day, right? It's awesome for kids. But there's costs, like you said, and parents fight about this. Okay, especially the parent who doesn't want to take little Johnny to, choir rehearsal because this parent doesn't care for it. And so that's a whole nother topic that I'd love to get into with you guys. But it's 22 minutes after, so we ran out of time. But let me open the floor up, guys. Any other last minute tips, concerns, thoughts you want to put out there to viewers and listeners?
Well, I always say this: a good divorce decree goes in your desk drawer and you never look at it again. You put the kids' needs and desires and activities number one. And if the kid is thriving and doing well and is happy and feels safe and secure, and the parents are miserable, they're doing a great job. And every child is different. What works for one child may not work for the next child.
I want to tell people and remind them that children have feelings too, and sometimes they need to have a say if they're, of course, mature enough to understand. Because I happened to hear from children that were in the shared custody something like, you know what, when I'm with mom, I miss my dad. When I'm with dad, I miss my mom. And to a degree, this 50-50 custody, if distributed evenly, can minimize this feeling. Take account of the children's feelings too, not just your own.
All right, guys. With that, go see a good mediator, folks. All right. Until next time. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.